Losing something you created sucks, especially when the thing you lose was taken by the people you're supposed to trust and see every day of your school life. I'm Maddie, and before I go into my story, I want to let you know what I'm painting. So first off, I am using gouache to paint this girl I found on Pinterest, and I use the crappiest Walmart gouache because I think it's still pretty nice, and I'm very cheap. I've been going through a little bit of an art block and burnout lately, so painting in my sketchbook is the best way for me to get out of that, and without further delay, this is the story of how my high school stole my art. To preface, I went to school in Arizona, and for those of you who don't know, Arizona has famously been one of the worst states for public schooling in the USA. I quite literally roll up my sleeves and fight anyone on the subject because as much as I love Arizona, the public schools are not great. I can go into more stories about that later though. One thing my school district did every single year was have an art fair / art competition. And as a young child whose only talent was art, and my only way to receive attention from others in a healthy way, this was my favorite event of the entire school year. Each school would choose a few students from each grade to enter artwork they made in school into the competition. Then the projects would be displayed in the high school's auditorium for everyone to see. Imagine an art gallery, and that's basically how it was. There would be prize money and ribbons that would be given out to each and every student that would win best art for their grade. It's something akin to a dog show where it'd be like the 3 best German shepherds, you know. I remember it used to be a much bigger deal when I was a kid than when I got into middle school and high school, both by the schools and by my friends and family. If you were in the art fair, you would get to bring your family to the after school event and show off your epic art skills, and I remember I would always be excited to go and look at all the art made by the high schoolers, hoping to be just as good as they were someday. The thing I would hope for, though, was to win a ribbon. As dumb as it sounds, I grew up in a highly competitive and overachieving family, and it was really difficult for me to feel like I was keeping up adequately with my siblings. I wasn't really into sports like they were, and there weren't many other opportunities otherwise for me to win something physical like a ribbon that, in my opinion, substantially proved I was good at something. And these ribbons were given out to the people who won first, second, or third place in different categories like sculptures, paintings, and things like that. I wanted a ribbon, guys. My little grade school butt wanted a ribbon so badly to prove to other people that I was good at something. And as the years went on, while I was in school, it started becoming clear that it wasn't really about talent and more just trying to fill spaces so that the younger kids and families have something to look at. I was basically in every single art fair because the competition was non-existent. I don't want to brag or anything, but you know, I was in my high school's art fair. So in high school, my junior year, I was in a ceramics class, and I tend to really like ceramics just because I can mess around with things and make the stuff that I really want to make. And out of the extra classes we can take, ceramics was the most funded out of all of them, which was strange considering the financial position the schools were in. That being said, in order to join any of the art classes, you needed like $50 just to be able to take the class, so probably where all the money came from. Specifically in ceramics, my main goal was to basically make anything and everything. At one point, I exclusively only made mini ceramic horses with discarded clay no one else would use. This year, the 2 somewhat odd things I made were a centaur and a World War II airplane. Not because I was obsessed with Italia and America as my favorite character or anything. I made it for completely normal reasons, like really liking history. Anyways, my teacher challenged us to make something you wouldn't normally see another sculpture being made using the slab method. That is where you roll out the clay into slabs and then you make something. Usually this is used to make something like a box or like a cup. That's how you would normally see it, so an airplane was completely out of the ordinary in my opinion. And my deranged teenage self decided that an airplane with propellers was the perfect thing to make. So I got to work sculpting it for weeks on end, making it perfect, and unfortunately the first version I made completely crumbled before I could send it to the kiln for the first time. So I had to painstakingly sculpt a second one in half the time. So the airplane that I finally made was beautiful and gorgeous, and it was sent off to the kiln, and when it was sent back, it was also broken. The propellers had snapped off, and since it wasn't anything too difficult to fix, it wasn't a huge issue to me, so I glazed my little airplane and I sent it back to the kiln for the second time, and when it came back, it was absolutely perfect. The glaze I had used to try and make it somewhat camouflage was amazing, and I was so happy with how it looked. So happy that when the teacher asked if I could put it in the art fair, I said yes, because I am a narcissist and I want everyone to see how good I did. After all, I was genuinely proud of how it turned out, and I really did want to enter it into the art fair. And now, since I had been doing this since I was really young, the schools never have had you sign anything when you wanted any art to be entered into the fair. But this year, we had to sign a form that basically said we were allowing the art to be shown in the fair, but not to be held by the school for an extended amount of time. I was totally okay with my art being shown. After all, that was the point of the fair in the first place. So I, as well as a lot of others, signed this newly introduced form. This was the beginning of a very long and exhausting battle. So the day comes for the art fair, and I end up swinging by after work, and it turns out my little airplane had won 3rd place for 3D sculptures, and this was absolutely one of the most exciting days of my art career so far, especially since in the past, the first 3 winners usually get a gift card or a cash prize, along with a nice little ribbon. So, after the art fair, you get your artwork back from the school, and you can take it home. My ceramics teacher comes into class wheeling a cart full of art projects, telling us that our projects can now go home since they don't need to be shown at the fair anymore. I walk up to the cart and I start to search for my little airplane. Everyone is grabbing their projects, and I'm searching and searching and searching, and finally the cart is empty and my airplane is nowhere to be seen. Confused, I go to ask my teacher about it, and she tells me I'm not getting it back. And when I ask why not, she tells me that because I won, the school is allowed to keep my project for a year to display, which doesn't really sound like a reward as much of it sounds more like a punishment if you ask me, but you know, that's just my opinion. And when I tell her that I wanted it back, she said that the paper I had signed was legally binding, which is not true. That's like the main reason you need your parents to sign permission slips and things while you're still under the age of 18. It's because the school can't legally bind an underage student to a contract. I tried to explain to my teacher that next year is my senior year in high school and that I won't be able to pick up my project after the next year had ended. And she basically told me, tough luck, kid, it's ours now. And for some reason, I didn't think to talk to a higher authority because I didn't think there was anything that could be done about it. Though I do remember talking to my parents about the situation, and their reaction was basically the same as mine. Upset, but you know, I guess there was nothing that could have been done about it. And so my little airplane was held by my school to display, but like, I literally never saw the dang thing because I had no idea where it was being kept. I don't know, the whole thing was really bizarre to me, and I never heard another art student complain that the same thing had happened to them either. I never saw the airplane. It was never being displayed. We didn't even have display cases, so the entire thing where the school is like keeping it to display is just super bizarre. Maybe the whole thing was just a conspiracy to get a nice little paperweight, because it was beautiful. So the end of my senior year was fast approaching, and I was a little pissed off about my artwork essentially being stolen and held from me, and I wanted it back. So I went back to my ceramic teacher to ask about the plane, and she told me to go talk to the front office about it. And when I went to the front office, they told me they had no idea what I was talking about. And since I had no idea where it was, and I wouldn't be able to point out that yes, that sculpture belonged to me, they wouldn't be able to help me. Eventually, they had me write down my information on a sheet of paper so that they could give it back, and my graduation came and went, and I never got my little airplane back. My high school had given me the runaround and taken it from me with a non-legally binding contract being held over my head. I never even got a ribbon or a prize out of it since my school district had deemed that to be unfair to other students. is probably because they had no money for ribbons or prizes at that point. Now, here's where things get a little muddled for me. While I was in my first semester of college, I could have sworn the school had contacted my parents and had them pick up the sculpture since they were the only contact the school had for the airplane's owner, but neither of my parents remember this. The fun thing about having parents that forget things is that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so maybe I just came up with the story because I was so distraught over it being taken. Or maybe they picked it up and packed it away with the rest of my things, and they had just forgotten. Or maybe it's being used as a nice paperweight in my old high school. Either way, I was robbed. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with me. If you want to hear me rant about my old school, I have a plethora of insane things my underfunded and undereducated school did. And if you like my art, you can see more of it on my website. I hope you all have a very nice day, and remember, if you are under the age of 18, contracts aren't legally binding, and you should always fight and steal your artwork back.